Good afternoon all. It's 2 o'clock. Welcome to this afternoon's meeting, Corporation Services Financial Resilience Service Transformation Committee. We'll open the meeting with apologies for absence, please.
No apologies, Chair.
No, I've had none either, Sam. Item 2, disclosures of personal and prejudicial interests. No indication, Sam. No. Item 3, the minutes to approve. The minutes from Thursday, the 18th of May, page 1. Can we have a mover, please? No. Can we have a mover, please? Patience, thank you. And Leslie. Thank you. We got a little, we've had a request if we can address the work plan first, which is item 5, and then revert back to human rights, which is item 4. So we'll move on with item 5, which is the work plan. You moving this?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm here on behalf of Ness Young, the Interim Director, and I'll be here on an ongoing basis because as things stand, Ness doesn't work on a Tuesday, so she's asked me to deputise for her. So presenting today's report, because I'm sure you're aware of things like your remit, your terms of reference, your relationship with scrutiny, but I'll just quickly go through page 11, where we talk in some detail about the work plan. The first one is human rights, and I thought perhaps that would sit better coming after this, and myself and Rhian can update you on human rights. But you can see the expected outcomes then in the second columns. There's digital transformation, so the idea that you contribute to the development of our customer service standards, and then things like our medium-term financial plan. So Ben Smith will come probably to the October meeting to present you with a paper to prepare you for a following meeting where you can actually contribute to the identification of savings and contribute to the medium-term financial plan. Then we'll look at workforce transformation, and you can contribute there to the development of the new leadership behaviours and the new learning and development offer. And then there'll be stuff later in the year to be agreed, but also then we'll be doing some work on the preparation of the annual report where you summarise the activity done throughout the year. So that's a very quick whistle-stop tour through your work plan. Happy to take any questions, Chair, at this stage.
Thank you, Lee. Are there any questions for Lee, please? There we are, thank you.
Thanks. I can do the human rights next.
Human rights, please, Lee, over to you.
All right, so quickly moving seamlessly on to human rights. Members will be aware from our previous meeting, we brought a paper bringing the latest kind of progress we'd made on the Human Rights Initiative. When we spoke last, we were putting the finishing touches to an event we were organising for various stakeholders. That took place last Friday at the Swansea.com stadium. It was really well attended, broad range of stakeholders in terms of people and organisations that the council reach. And I know that when we were last at this forum, some members expressed kind of concerns and issues that we weren't reaching some, or you term, hard to reach groups. But in terms of what happened on Friday, we engaged a lot of young people as well as those kind of organisations that the council normally has engagement mechanisms with. I know Councillor Walton was there and she might want to give a view of what she thought of the event. It was really successful in terms of us having the opportunity to discuss and engage with various stakeholders, the priorities and the development of an action plan. So that was the idea, that we went there, discussed the priorities and looked what each organisation could do in terms of the priorities and whether they could put an action plan together or develop some kinds of initiatives to promote and embed those priorities in their organisations. We as a council are now far better informed about what our stakeholders would like us to do as a council. But I'll just hand over to Rhian Miller, who was one of the organisers of the day and maybe has just a bit more detail and can go into a bit more detail for members.
Thank you, Leah. Hi, Ariane.
Hiya, thanks guys. And I'm not sure if Leslie wants to come in before I start.
Yeah, just quickly to say I thought it was an excellent day. And whilst initially, when I saw the 5 priorities and we were going to only have 10 minutes on each one, I think in a way that concentrated our minds so much that we use those 10 minutes very well, and I'm guessing so did the other tables. And I'm sure that between the whole, 10 tables, amazing attendance, fantastic. I think between a lot of us, we've probably come out with a lot of good ideas as to form the basis of a plan to make sure we are progressing the ideals and the pledge of being a human rights city. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Councillor Walton. Yeah, just a little bit more detail then on what happened on the day, because the report you have in front of you was written prior to the event, so we're just going to provide you with a bit of a verbal update really on the event. So 103 people attended the event last Friday, including 16 children from secondary schools. We did a couple of workshops. The first one followed a presentation that took place by Katie Spendiff, who works in the Welsh Government in the Children's Rights Unit. She did a presentation on human rights principles in practice, and we asked tables to provide some feedback, some initial feedback on what further support could they bring to the table in terms of Swansea becoming a human rights city. So some initial feedback from those discussions from the tables was examples of sharing information about human rights better, promote the guides that have been produced by the Human Rights City steering group, take part in consultation and engagement events when they come up, creating more spaces for people to be able to listen and work when developing in their policies. Some more staff training on human rights that came up, although there has been some training delivered within this project. I think more staff training was one of the issues that was raised, and then review our existing policies to make sure that human rights and the links to human rights are more explicit. So that was some of the examples that came out of that discussion. And then in the afternoon there was a lot of discussion around each of the individual priorities. Adele has written a headline report which I will circulate to you following this meeting, but I'll just touch on a few of the issues that came out. So the first priority is tackling poverty. So the main issues identified on the day and through the table feedback was around stigma and language use. So things like food banks, the language that's used around that may kind of put people off in terms of accessing that services. There's a huge, there was a feeling that there's a bit of lack of access to some of our services, possibly because of the language used or the fact that they don't know that those services exist. Access to information was really important. Obviously the cost of living crisis came up quite a lot and the challenges that has brought, and access to funding. So there's obviously quite a lot of funding streams going on, and maybe better information around how people can access those. The actions that came out of that then were do more control production around our policies and practices in terms of tackling poverty so that people are engaged in that process earlier. Training for more frontline staff around the issues and kind of challenges around those who face poverty in Swansea. Use of language, so maybe having a guide around, well, if we are going to tackle our language within our policies around poverty, maybe a guide to help inform people around doing that. One of the actions is possible having free school meals for all around Swansea, including in school holidays. Obviously there's budget issues with that, and then some knowledge then about building promotion of pension credit and other kind of grants and funding that's out there. And success will look like people having an increased prospects and options, an improved sense of dignity and future-proof jobs. Please feel free to stop me at any point if you want to contribute to this discussion, but I'll just go through each one in turn. Vulnerable children and families then is our second priority that was identified from human rights. So again, the main issues identified on the day were people don't seem to know what they are entitled to in terms of benefits. So that's obviously a clear issue. Social workers are underfunded. Children have fallen into the gaps in education and better support for young carers in schools. So those are the issues that were identified for the day. Some actions then that we can consider: support given to families, ensuring what they have access to what they're entitled to. So again, that information sharing of what is out there. Some online platform for young people to be able to share their views in an anonymous way around vulnerable children. So if they have an issue, that they can report it anonymously. Financial support for foster leavers. And the example then around uniform swap shops, that came from the young people themselves around, you know, the cost of uniform and maybe having a system where they have uniform swap shops in schools. And success would look like more children attending schools, young people are listened to and have somewhere to go. Tackling discrimination then is the third priority. So the main issues on the day that came out in the discussions was hate crime, online safety, accessible housing, language barriers, and ensuring the use of the correct language in policies. Some of the actions then that were identified to deal with that, multicultural events, cohesion events, to try and bring different people together from across Swansea in one area, and making sure that we're reaching out to those vulnerable groups as well and actively listening to the lived experience. Sharing best practice between organisations. There's a lot of cross working along the day, and I think it was a really good opportunity to bring those organisations together, and let's hope we can build on that going forward. And success would look like greater community cohesion and learning from and about different cultures. Domestic abuse and violence is priority number 4, and the main issues from the day that came out were poverty and stresses that come from poverty and the link between poverty and domestic abuse and violence, substance abuse and the links between that and domestic abuse and violence, the hidden domestic abuse. So often we're aware of some of the key forms of domestic abuse, but some domestic abuse is hidden. Perpetrators, we often forget about them. So that was the kind of the main issues about, you know, why people do undertake this activity, and the lack of knowledge around domestic abuse. And some actions then that came out from that. So safeguarding is everybody's business, and so we need to be supporting people all across Swansea and who are working in the public sector to ensure that they are aware of these issues. Support and engagement to the perpetrators of domestic abuse and violence, and understanding, you know, where they're coming from, and offer them support. More education in schools around domestic abuse and violence and what healthy relationships actually look like, and some more safe spaces for people to go to who are experiencing domestic abuse and violence. Success would look like people know their rights, and the victims and perpetrators are given the support they need to break cycles. And then finally, our last priority is human rights awareness. So the main issues from the day was, what is the process of becoming a human rights city? People were a bit unfamiliar with that. We need to be really open and honest about monitoring our own status in Swansea as a human rights city. So what are the processes we're going to have in place for that? And clear on how to work through the challenges as we progress our journey, and how to hook human rights into every service. So it's making sure that that's like golden thread across for us as an authority, and of course our PSB partners. Some suggested actions as a result, so maybe an assessment process. So obviously we have been asking people to sign a pledge as part of this process to, you know, support our work in Human Rights City, but there's kind of no sort of assessment process alongside that, so maybe something like that. Some human rights champions across Swansea. Maybe we could create a network of champions who will be there to kind of champion the work going forward. And all partners need to be working together on this, so there needs to be that greater communication within the partners. And success would look like human rights is explicit in policy. So when you pick up any policy, you'll be able to clearly see the links to human rights and what it means. A transparent process around assessing human rights, and everyone support the human rights initiative. So that's a really whistle-stop tour of what the main themes were at the day, and just to make it clear, that was just, we went around the tables and asked for verbal feedback on the day, and this is what came back. Adele is in the process of collating all the information that came back on the day, and there'll be a full report written up. But we wanted to use this opportunity really to see if you as a group had any views or suggestions around feeding into that work, and whether you had the time to, at this meeting, share your views on each of those priority areas. That's one question. Also, we are doing a survey which kind of mirrors the workshops that took place on the event on Friday, and we're more than happy to circulate that to yourselves to take part in, to kind of have your view within that action plan development.
Rhian?
Yeah.
It's Mandy.
Hi Mandy, sorry.
Hiya, you okay? When we talk
Yeah,
about
good.
training, obviously training for officers, training for elected members as well?
Yeah, so there have been some sessions with elected members, but I'm sure we could put on more if you haven't been to one. So there have been two. We did some British Institute of Human Rights has done training for us, but yeah, if there's a couple of councillors who haven't attended that training, we can look about putting on another session.
I just feel it's a massive agenda again, you know, and a positive item on the work plan. So we need to take as much as we can, you know, officers, elected members, everybody. So I think, you know, the members of this committee, maybe I'm speaking for them, but I think they would be very interested in, you know, in progressing their knowledge and their skill around human rights as a city, or a city as a human rights city, Swansea as a human rights city. And it's interesting, I'm interested in when you talk about, as we've spoken about numerous times, about how we touch base with vulnerable people or people who are not aware, people for whatever reason haven't got the confidence to stand forward, haven't got that voice. So to me, probably that's a big piece of work from this that probably I will be attached to as we progress. But I'm sure, you know, we will get there. But it's a massive piece of work again, you know, and I want to take this opportunity for thanking Lee and his team again for, you know, running with the ball and achieving so much to date. And I couldn't be there last week. I had every intention of coming, but I couldn't make it. But it's massive and it's an ongoing agenda again. You know, we can only progress for the betterment of the city and the residents and for the organisation. So thank you, Rhian. Any other questions or observations? Leslie?
To be fair, Joe was before me. Do you want to bring him in first?
Hello. You can go, Leslie. It's okay. I don't mind waiting.
Okay, I'll go first then. Just to let you all know, I'm in the process of putting together a hopefully simple, plain speaking description of what human rights are and what it means to be a human rights city, which I'm going to post on our ward Facebook page. So I hopefully you'll think it's worth it. I will circulate to all councillors. So please feel free to make use of it in whatever way you, I mean, it could well be that you can make a poster out of it. It doesn't just necessarily mean it's something for Facebook, but I'm trying very hard to make sure it's simple, it's not heavy-handed, because I think the phrase human rights city, most people will read that and think, what on earth's that on about? So I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. And if anybody's got any bright ideas when I do circulate it and say, oh, why don't you put that instead? Feel free, quite happy. Thanks.
Thank you, Leslie. Councillor Hale, Joe?
Yeah, just only a couple of observations, really. I suppose one around the accessibility to what we have to offer. I mean, it'd be really good if we could. I mean, I've been to some of the work fairs and they're not really very well publicised. So no wonder that people that really don't know what's on offer out there. And I know we used to have welfare officers. Maybe we could get a couple of officers going out into communities on a regular basis. And the other thing, I suppose, was around the domestic violence and some of the stuff around that and schools. And I suppose a lot of that is around early intervention, isn't it? I mean, it's if you look at all the studies that have been done across the UK in poverty, substance abuse, alcoholism, all of it, you know, the big, look at Manchester, they've had their city centre has had massive improvements because of early intervention. So let's not forget the practicalities of doing things as well. But thanks very much.
Thanks, Joe. Lee?
Yeah, if there's no other members who want to speak at this point, Chair, was just to go back to what Rhian was asking of the committee in terms of how do you now want to get involved in that development of the action plan. So I know Rhian offered a few options there. It's whether you wanted to take part in that survey or you felt you needed a bespoke workshop. It's just for us as officers to understand how you'd like to contribute, and then we can make the arrangements or work with you on that.
Anybody wishing to answer, Lee? I'll answer you then. I think we'd all be happy to take part in the survey. It's an important step, and I do believe we have got a passion for workshops, and we've got to facilitate those workshops this year. So I think, speaking on behalf of the committee, we're happy, to run with you, Lee, and the team, because we need the knowledge and the skill as well. The only way we can deliver this is from top to bottom, bottom to top again. So we're happy to run with anything you can facilitate for us, and anything that we can feed in. We're more than happy to facilitate that as well.
So I think there's a couple of things we can do, Chair. We can organise another training session, as Rhian hinted at. We could do that with the British Institute of Human Rights. We can make that survey available for you, and we can look at some kind of workshop. So if we work with yourself and Sam on maybe being able to fit that in for the committee's convenience, but also within our timeline, Rhian, of when we need to develop the action plan. So we'll bring that together. So there's 3 opportunities there for the committee to have more involvement and have more input into what we're doing, and hopefully become even more aware of human rights through that training. I've gone through it myself. It was a really good training session, so I think members would benefit from it and welcome it.
Right, thank you, Lee. Leslie?
Yeah, just wanted to say that I think as soon as Adele's report comes out, that will be very helpful, because I think for those who weren't able to attend on Friday, Rhian came out with a lot of information there, and you need to be able to read it and assimilate it a bit more. And I think that will then be a good basis for the committee to be able to make more, come out with more thoughts and more suggestions. Thanks.
Thank you, Leslie. Are there any more patients?
Thank you, Chair. Like yourself and the other members of the committee, I quite welcome the idea of training and increasing our own, learning and our own awareness of human rights. But also, I think going forwards, we have to, after that, think about how we extend that awareness to the communities, to the general public, because a lot of people are not quite in touch with what human rights mean. And because of that, they don't even know what their human rights are. And I think that exacerbates a lot of the issues that we're seeing in the community today, especially around domestic violence, and with vulnerable children. And I also agree with Councillor Hale that early intervention is very important, and this is why we need to get that training and get the awareness out there into the communities. But also early intervention needs to have a holistic approach, which involves the different sectors. Anyway, to mention, mental health services, education, healthcare, and the rest of them. So yes, definitely the earlier that we can get that training and get the awareness out there, the better.
Thank you, Councillor. The awareness is one of the priorities, one of the 5 priorities we identified really early on in this initiative, and there's so much work to do on that. You're absolutely right. Just the areas you touched on then, we know it's an issue. What Councillor Walton just talked about in trying to get some simple language on our own sites, I think, if other members can replicate that, that would be really helpful in terms of engaging your own communities in a kind of really simple format. So we're happy to work with you on developing that, because anything we can do to reach out into communities and to make it simple and easy to understand, that's going to help everyone. So thank you, Councillor. I really appreciate that.
Sorry. Rhian, are you indicating to speak? Sorry, I was talking to myself.
That's okay, Chair. Thank you very much. I just wanted to remind you all, we very early on produced a Rights in Your Pocket guide. So it's a very small booklet, which was available on the day, actually, for people who attended to have a look at. But it literally just does explain what human rights are in a very short, small space. We do still have some of those hard copies left. So if councillors want to have some of those hard copies to distribute within their communities, please get in touch with myself and we can arrange that. It's also available on our website in digital form as well. So if you are looking to promote things within your own communities, please use that as well, because it is quite a nice document that will just help people understand what human rights are and give them more knowledge of their own rights. So just to remind the group of that.
Thank you, Rhian. We have some copies, please.
We will make some available to the committee, Chair. We work with Sam and we provide them as soon as you'll have them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any more questions or observations for Lee or Rhian? No, thank you. We've got to refer back to the work plan. So we've just got to formally accept. Do you want to speak? Oh, go on then, Lee.
Sorry, Chair. When we first talked about the work plan, I should have highlighted the number 3, the co-production. Rhian and I have just met with the consultants we work with. So again, the committee will be aware we're working on co-production initiative. We've engaged a company called CoPro Lab Wales. They're helping us develop a policy, a toolkit and all other kind of helpful things for us to embed co-production in the organisation. From today's meeting, they highlighted a number of training opportunities, and I felt it was appropriate to highlight those to the committee because, again, members are able to access that training. It isn't just available to officers. So there's a number of dates coming up in the next 2 months, I think June and July. Rhian will have the details. We'll send them around to members of the committee. So please feel free to choose any of those training opportunities available to the council. Because again, it's about raising awareness, people getting a better understanding of what co-production is and how we can use it as a council in our everyday business. So please, get on as many of those training opportunities as you'd like, and we'd welcome that. So just to highlight that, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lee. So we will now formally accept the work plan, please. Can we have a mover, please? And Francesca. So seconded, Francesca? Yeah, thank you. Right, and then we're on to item 6, date and times of future meetings. And we have Tuesday, 25th of July, 1400. Tuesday, 26th of September, because obviously we move into a 6-week period agenda. 31st of October, 12th of December, and then we're into 24. So we've got 23rd of January, 27th of February, and then we've got the annual report on the 23rd of April. So those are the dates set for 23-24 for this committee. And is there anything else anybody would like? Oh, phone ringing. There we are then. I'll declare this meeting closed. It's 14:28. Take care, look after yourselves, and I'll see you in the workshop, guys. Take care.